And now it's time for Mob Talk Radio with your host, Jeff Canarsie.
And welcome to Mob Talk Radio. I'm your host, Jeff Canarsie. We took 2 weeks off. I do that from time to time. After I do a bunch of shows, usually it's because I got other stuff going on, because I do have a life outside of this, and I do work on other projects outside of this. All that being said, today we're going to cover Toto Riina. There's a lot of differences between the way the mob works in Italy versus the United States, and I think that just to show you the depth of who this guy was at his core. They didn't call him the Beast for no reason. Now, a couple news and notes I wanted to get to. I have long thought about how I'm going to talk about this because I've actually, and I'm not going to lie, I recorded this intro probably 20 different times, and each time I did, it sounded more and more negative each time, and it's not that I'm trying to be negative. It's that I think that I'm a mafia snob, and I think I like my films a certain way, and I think that I believe what I believe, and I like to see things my way, and so I think sometimes that has a tendency of coming out in the way I talk. So let's just say it this way. The John Gotti film comes out June 15th. There have been a lot of fucking people bashing the film, but let's get right to the truth. The truth is that there was nobody in attendance at the Cannes Film Festival that was a reporter. Nobody from the media has seen the film, so any reports that they did is bullshit. The Hollywood Reporter is the one that's responsible for the first major nasty review, and I think like something like 15 fucking sentences in there, like a former racketeer and a former accused murderer shouldn't even be allowed at Cannes. So obviously they don't like John Gotti Jr. being there, and they're in their right to have that opinion. But when you start your article bashing a film that way, that sort of tells me you already got a problem. So the rest of the review was bullshit, and a bunch of other news outlets like piggybacked right off of that. The second thing I want to say about that is people keep saying, oh, but there was a standing ovation. Come on. Let's be realistic here. First of all, yeah, you're going to get a standing ovation because John Travolta is in the fucking audience. Yeah, what do you think they're going to do? Throw fruit and boo? They're not going to do that to a film. Nobody's going to do that at Cannes. There's like this whole atmosphere and this whole sort of hoity-toity kind of fucking thing that goes on. Nobody's going to boo. So do I buy a standing ovation as a huge success? No, not at all. Unequivocally not. I don't care what anybody says because that's what people are saying, and I just don't buy it. I don't buy it because I don't think you can judge how good a film is by showing it to a bunch of fucking snobs in France. This is my opinion. Did people like it? Sure. Was it received well? Sure. But do you really think they're going to boo? You really think they're going to throw fruit? Come on. Get serious. So what's going to make this film a success? I don't think it's an award film. I'm going to tell you that right out of the gate. It's just not that type of film to begin with, okay? That's the first thing. Second thing is, it took a decade to get this film off the ground. That's a success. You made a film. 2, you're at Cannes. Regardless, you're at Cannes Film Festival. Huge. 3, you had a $10 million budget. You're going to open on, 1,000, 2,000 screens. It's called a soft opening. You're going to make the $10 million back. That's a success. So for people that want to write these screeching fucking stupid reviews and stuff like that, the film's already a success. That's the bottom line. Anything over that $10 million is profit. Anything over that $10 million is a success. Do I think they're going to open $300 million? Fuck no. Not even going to come close. But they're going to make money on it, and that's important. And I say that because it's not It isn't, and this isn't a negative thing. People, and I want everybody to listen to me when I say this, because I already know there's one person or two people that are going to hear this and they're going to think, oh, look at him, he's trashing it. That's not what I'm doing. I'm being realistic. This is not a $100 million movie with all A-list actors. It's not, okay? And that's not somehow to demoralize the film. That's not a way to kick the film. I'm being honest with you. $10 million is nothing for a film. It's absolutely nothing. Some small independent films get $5 to $10 million. So what I'm saying to you is that you cannot judge the success of this film by whether or not it's mentioned for awards. It's judged by, did you make a profit? It was at Cannes Film Festival. You got a movie made. So I think that, and I say it's not an award film. I just don't think so. And I have an important reason for that. Has nothing to. It's a subject material, and it's also the fact that Hollywood likes a gangster film a certain way. They want gunfire, tears, drama, and yes, you are going to get some of that with the Gotti film, but it's not all that way. It's very much a narrative of between a father and a son. It's a narrative between the family and the father. So it's a different story, and it takes a lot of balls, and it takes a lot of courage as far as I'm concerned, because you're going against the grain coming out the gate. That's not the way Hollywood wants to make that film. You know, they want Marty Scorsese to do a biopic from John Gotti's life from 20 years old till the day he died, and they want to show all the mayhem and the bullets and the blood. That's what Hollywood wants. So the fact that they came with the reverse and sort of against the grain from the beginning, that's what's going to create a lot of the bullshit that you're saying, because a lot of people aren't going to like it. And some people are just bitter, and they just want to see everybody fail. And that's the reality. And this is Hollywood. Hollywood's fake. Hollywood's always been fake. Relationships are forged over who's got the biggest smile and check. And that's the way Hollywood has always been. That's the way it always will be. So I have a tendency in not believing anything that I fucking read about a film. I see what other people say. Because as far as I'm concerned, the people that made it, I could give a fuck about their opinion. Of course they're going to say it's great. That's what their job is to do. I look at everybody else, because everybody else, like the audience or the people that are going to buy tickets, those are the opinions that do matter. They're the ones that are going to financially back your risk. So it comes out June 15th. I think it's going to be a good film in a lot of different ways. But like I said, the mob snob in me likes a gangster film a certain way. And it's not me being negative. It's me being honest. I like films to be a certain way. I think films have to have a certain realistic sort of thing. And I'll give you one point. There's a scene in a courtroom with John Travolta and Willie Boy Johnson. First of all, if you know anything about Willie Boy Johnson was not like some small, pasty, skinny Irish guy. Willie Boy Johnson was a fucking beast and a tough guy. I don't understand why they casted an Irish guy to play him. It doesn't really make any sense. Because the character, looking at the actor that was playing him, I wouldn't be scared of him with a fucking gun in his hand. But Willie Boy Johnson, you look at him, you look at a picture of him, that guy was a fucking animal. This Irish twerp or whatever, it doesn't make sense to me, some of the choices that they made casting-wise. And I'm just being honest. I don't buy it. I don't buy an Irish guy playing Willie Boy Johnson. It doesn't make sense to me. But, you know, it is what it is. And sometimes when you have a budget that's small, you can't go out and get a ton of like A-list type actors. So I understand from that perspective. The one thing that I can say is that in that scene, John Travolta, man, looks tough. Looks really tough. And maybe that's where I got it wrong. Is maybe it's not important that the guy portraying Willie Boy Johnson looks like him, because it's what they're saying that should be important. But like I said, the mob snob in me just has an issue with that. And I'm not the only one. There's a lot of other people that sort of are like, what the fuck? But it's what John Travolta says in that scene, the way he looks. You know, I think the line, and I'm paraphrasing it best here, is like, you know, something about, you know, it's kind of hard forgiving a fucking ghost. That is a tough fucking line. And the look on Travolta's face, he was fucking Gotti. So from that perspective, I'm like super excited to see the film. I think Travolta nailed it. I really do. And I think that is going to be the catalyst for this film. I think that you can almost bypass maybe some of the casting choices because Travolta is going to be so powerful. It's going to be what it's going to be. But like I said, this is my opinion. I'm a mob snob. And that's just the reality of it. But I think the film, in general, is going to be good. But I think there's too much talk of whether it's going to do this, whether it's going to be that. Hello, it's June 15th. It hasn't even come out yet. The only other thing that I kind of question is just it doesn't seem like they did a lot to promote it, and I don't understand that. The film posters are just now starting to like reach the city. I don't understand why there wasn't more of an emphasis a month ago to start like promoting the shit out of this film. Yes, John Travolta was at Cannes, and I totally understand that, and I know how that works. But why wouldn't you promote the shit out of this film? I just don't get it. A lot of people, and listen, I'll be honest with you, a lot of people don't even know this film is coming out. If you're not on social media or you're not following like the mob type of shit, yeah, it's been on E.T. and some of these other programs, and Daily News has had articles and stuff like that, but there's not been any promotion on TV. There's not been a trailer on TV. And so the average person doesn't even know this film is coming out. And so from my perspective, I don't understand it. I don't know if it's just like a lack of funding or it's just a lack of consideration for the film. But they didn't do, not much has been done. And that can be a real problem because people don't know it's there. People don't know it's coming out till the last minute, you know? And so I'm just saying from my perspective, I would have done something a lot different than that. I would have promoted the everlasting shit out of it. You have to, because you want people to go. And you know what? Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe like in the next like 10 days, you're going to start to see stuff. So maybe I'm wrong. I could very well be wrong in that perspective of it. So all in all, it's coming out on June 15th. I want everybody to run out and grab a ticket and go see it. I think you're going to enjoy it. And if you don't, you don't. And I'll share all comments, good and bad, on my show. Okay, June 9th at 10 p.m., there's an A&E documentary, Gotti, Father and Son, which really it's Gotti and family. The whole entire family participated from what I understand. That begins June 9th at 10 p.m. Then on June 10th at 9 p.m., the second part of that series is out. I think it's going to be good. I think you're going to get information from the horse's mouth, and that's always what's important. Don't have to take my word for it. Don't have to read an article on it. Get it from the horse's mouth. And I think that's going to be even bigger than the film. I think that's going to be huge. I don't think that anybody's ever had access to the Gottis like A&E has. So it's going to be interesting. So make sure that if you have cable to go to A&E on June 9th at 10 p.m. and check it out. And then on June 10th at 9 p.m. Is the second part of that. Okay, now I have to get to one other thing. And I really wasn't going to talk about this, mainly because there's two things. I don't like to give anybody the fucking satisfaction of giving them any sort of airtime on my show if they're a scumbag. I don't like doing it. I know that the people that do listen to my show don't fucking like it. But then there are times when I have to speak out, not because I'm bashing somebody, but because I'm telling the truth. And that's sort of what I want to do. It's a situation where there are things that happen and things that transpire that are so infantile, so immature, so stupid, that sometimes it absolutely dumbfounds me. Now, here's the first thing, and yes, this is about John A. Light. The first thing is he was thrown off Facebook for stalking, making threats. He has done so much, and listen, if this was just about me, whatever, we talk for 2 minutes, we get over it, but this is about a lot of other people. His MO is if you say anything about him or you tell the truth, he does a couple things. First thing is he starts lying about you on social media to everybody. Second thing is he gets your phone number and he starts harassing you on the phone. If he can't get you on the phone, he's going to find out where your parents live and he's going to go to the house and stalk them by taking photos outside the house. Then he'll try to get their phone number and harass them on the phone. He's done that to countless people, not just me. Okay, this is other people. With me, I do a radio show. I knew Johnny White at one time, so the idea that he's going to come at me, that's fine. I sort of accept that because of what I do. But when you don't do those things and you're just like a fucking nobody, just minding your own business who has an opinion, and he will go to the extreme to put your fucking address out on social media and tell everybody to go there and harass you, that's what children fucking do. I don't see him getting in his fucking car and doing it himself. He hires all his little fucking loser buddies to do it. Now, he was thrown off Facebook. So was their little secret group that they had. That's right. Big Mouth had a secret little group where they lied about a ton of different people, made up a bunch of crap about everybody. And what ended up happening was, I guess somebody, and it wasn't me, I would tell you if it was, somebody reported them. They were like posting people's personal documents, like their social security numbers, their birth certificates, all kinds of crazy shit. And they got caught, and Johnny White's been removed from Facebook, thrown off, done. That's why you don't see him on social media, because he's done. Now, he's not telling everybody that. His little fanboy group isn't telling everybody that we don't know why we got thrown off Facebook. The fuck if you don't. Death threats, harassing phone calls. This is what rats do. For all this shit, for all this tough guy fucking act, for all the tough guy act in the world, he ain't going to do it himself. He never has. He always gets other little fucking shitheads to do it for him because he's gutless. Now, the reason why I'm saying that is to say this. So 2 days ago, I think it was 2 days. Was it Sunday or Saturday? Yeah, it was Thursday night, 3 days ago. At 1 o'clock in the morning, I get a call from Union City, New Jersey. Now, I don't know nobody in Union City, New Jersey, all right? And they call repeatedly. They call, I let it ring. I'm not going to pick up the phone. I don't know who the fuck it is. It's 1 o'clock in the morning. I'm trying to fucking watch Roseanne and fucking eat popcorn or whatever the fuck. And person doesn't leave a voicemail. 10 minutes later, same thing. 5 minutes later, same thing. 4 calls. So I'm like, you know what? This is kind of weird. So the next day I have my attorney. He's like, you know what? Give me the number. Let me handle it. So he calls. He gets somebody on the phone. And he says, you looking for my client? Blah, 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 blah. And the guy's like, yeah. So I get on the phone and I'm like, hello? And he's like, yo. First of all, yo was an obvious sign. And I says, well, who the fuck is this? He goes, I work for Con Ed. I need to get your address to come over because we have to regulate your electricity. First of all, let me tell you something. I don't have a Con Ed bill in my name. I don't have a phone number attached to my Con Ed bill. Second of all, Con Ed doesn't call you at 1 o'clock in the fucking morning. The next thing is Con Ed doesn't come over to regulate your fucking electricity. You either pay the bill and they turn the shit off, but they don't come over here to regulate nothing. This guy wanted my address, and because he wanted to find out where I lived. This is a John A. Light move. This is what John A. Light has done to other people. He wants my address. So this is what I'm going to say about it. Can I prove it was John A. Light? No, but come on. Let's be realistic here. I'm not stupid. I wasn't born yesterday. I'm 99% sure it was him. But like I said, I'm not 100% and I can't prove it. However, I am going to say this. And he can take this any fucking way that he wants. You rat fuck. I don't need to fucking hide. I don't hide. I go everywhere. Bath Beach. I'm fucking in Bed-Stuy. I'm in Bensonhurst. I'm fucking Manhattan. I'm fucking everywhere. Queens. Woodhaven. Because I'm the sheriff of Woodhaven now, John. That's how it is. More people know me in Woodhaven than know you, you prick. How about that? How about that? I'm more popular in Woodhaven than you ever were. So the point is that if you want to call, if you want to fucking... And John A. Light's got my phone number, by the way. So it's not like he can't pick up the phone and speak his fucking mind, but he never does. It's always somebody else. It's a bitch move. So this is what I'm going to say about it. And of course, I'm actually going to see... Well, all right, I don't want to get into that. But let me just say this, for the record. I don't have any sort of respect for somebody that gives somebody else somebody's phone number and, has them call and harass people. It's because he's afraid to do it himself. I don't hide at all. Anybody that knows me will tell you I go everywhere. What the fuck do I need to hide for anyway? What do I need to hide for anyway? There's no reason for me to hide. Never has been, never will be. I'm not afraid of anybody, never have. I know a lot of people from all walks of life. But I got news for people like him. You keep the shit up, and I'm telling you, as God is my witness, and I'm going to be very, very clear about this, because this sort of comment got me in a lot of trouble years ago. I personally don't give a fuck about you. You're going to get what's coming to you someday anyway. It's not going to be from me, because I value my life, and I'm not going to waste my time on a fucking bottom-feeding rat piece of shit nobody cares about. I'm not going to waste my fucking time. But if you keep going out and threatening people, one day you're going to threaten the wrong fucking person. And then you're not going to be able to run back to the FBI and ask them to hold your fucking hand. Because that's what he does. That's what he does. That's his MO. If he can say whatever he fucking wants to you, but believe me, you can't say a word to him because he'll run right back to the FBI and tell them. I have text messages that I could put out that will show people that every time he's gone after people on social media and they come back and combat him, he says, don't send me another message or I'm turning them over to the FBI. That's what he does. He's a gutless fucking coward, piece of shit, pussy fuck. That's the way he's always been. That's the way he always will be. And I'm going to make one other point, and this is true. There have been times that I have said things about people on this show who I've actually run into in the street. Doesn't matter who, or I ran into him at a courthouse, or I ran into him at a diner, or a restaurant, or a gas station, whatever the fuck. And sometimes I've said things about people that maybe I think are accurate that aren't. And when I'm wrong, I definitely say so. And there have been people that haven't liked what I said, and I run into them, and they let me know they don't like it. But they do it in a way that's respectful. They do it in a way that's like, I don't understand why you have this opinion of me. I mean, you don't know me. Why would you have that opinion of me? I mean, granted, like other people are saying this shit, but this is me. I'm right in front of you. Get to know me, and maybe you won't think that. It's not that these guys need to be liked. Believe me, they could have cracked me over the head a million fucking times for some of the stuff that I've said. But they don't. Not because they're afraid to or because they're afraid I'll run and tell, because I think everybody knows I don't talk. But the point is that they come to me and they say, look, you said this. What the fuck is that all about? You don't know me. We're not tight like that. Get to know me. You'll see that that's not true. And guess what? They're right. Because the ones I take the time to get to know, they're nice guys. Does that mean I stop saying my narrative? No. I don't have to curb what I say because of them. But it's just the reality of it. It's how that they handle themselves. That's what men do. When you got a beef, you sit, you talk, and it's over and fucking done with. And that's it. I've run into several people like that have had a beef. And we talk it out, we shake hands, hug it up, and it's over with. And we're friends from then on. Because anybody that meets me outside of listening to this shit is kind of shocked that I'm not like some fucking animal. I'm hardcore to the point where I say what I mean. I like things a certain way, and that's the bottom line. Anything I say right here, I'll say to you to your face. I'm not scared of anybody. Some people may call that stupid. It's just the reality. And so in final, because I've ranted for 23 fucking minutes now, is that the point I'm making is that I'm sick and fucking tired of the prank calls. Be a fucking man. Don't hide behind the fucking police, because that's what you do. Be a man. If you got something to say, approach me. We'll talk about it. Call me up. Email me. I will meet you wherever. We will talk. But when you start doing coward shit like getting black guys to call me on the phone and make loose threats and stupid shit like this, come on. Come on. Be a fucking man. Be a fucking man. This is the guy that accused me of trying to have him killed. This is the guy that told a federal judge I was in the mafia and that all my friends were in the mafia. This is the guy that said my attorney was in the mafia. This is the guy that had to be yanked down by his lawyer in a courtroom because he couldn't stop ranting about John Gotti. Hello, we're not even at this fucking court hearing, you prick, to talk about that guy. I don't even know the fucking guy. He can't shut his fucking demonic face up. Beat red, Junior. This isn't even about him, you dumb fuck. It's about your mouth and your fucking actions. So at the end of the day, listen, and this is it. I'm done. I'm done after today. Because it's no longer important. Because fucking John Elite is now Johnny Nobody. Johnny Bestseller can't sell a fucking book. Johnny DeLito ain't even on social media. Now he's reduced to going on guys' couches and talking about his life on a shit-stained, cum-stained fucking couch and a fucking hood. That's what he's reduced to. That's what he's reduced to because he was flavor of the fucking month. No longevity. He can go to fucking Europe. He can go to Albania and he can go to Germany. Yeah, right. You believe that? Please, if he's going to fucking Germany, I'm flying to Jamaica this afternoon. Fuck it, let's go to Jamaica. Everybody, you know what? I'll pay for everybody's ticket. Everybody that listens, come on, I'll buy you a ticket to Jamaica. We'll all go. The fuck out of here. Jerk off. All right, all that being said, we're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to talk about Toto Riina. And we're going to get to your questions as well. It's going to be a long show. I'm sorry for ranting. It's just that I get sick of the bullshit. I'm a guy of my word. When I'm pissed and I want to say something, I say it to you. I don't have to give fucking a phone number to like some boyfriend of mine or whatever the fuck it is that this guy's doing. And call him and make threats. He'll get scared. Do I sound fucking scared to you? I'll bitch slap the fuck out of him like I grabbed him by his fucking throat in an elevator. I bet he doesn't tell that story to anybody. Of course not. Johnny Tough Guy backed down when Jeff Canarsie grabbed him by the fucking throat in an elevator. That's right. And I wish I could tell the story as to something else that happened there that he probably doesn't want anybody to know. But all in good time. It's going to come out. Believe me, there's going to be some shit coming. Don't get in the sandbox and try to play tough and throw sand in a motherfucker's eyes, and then when he pops you run and tell, because that's what you do. Stop being a tattletale. Stop being a tattletale. We'll be right back on Mob Talk Radio. I've said it before on my show. Anywhere I go, I like to have a favorite restaurant to go and eat and just kind of be myself. And one of the best restaurants that I have been to probably ever at this point is Kitchen Consigliere, run by Angelo Lutz in Collingswood, New Jersey. If you're coming out of New York and heading to Philly, stop in and see Angelo at 700 Haddon Avenue, Collingswood, New Jersey. Make sure you call and make a reservation if you're going to go. 856-854-2156. Remember, every Sunday is Sangria Sunday. Just the ambiance, the decor, the food, the staff is friendly and courteous and go out of their way to make your dining experience absolutely perfect. I would never ever stray you. I would never ever send you to the wrong place. Believe me, you can follow Kitchen Consigliere at KitCon Cafe on Twitter. And please, if you're heading out of Philly, if you're heading towards Philly, stop in and see Angelo at Kitchen Consigliere. And welcome back to Mob Talk Radio. I decided, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to do a couple of questions first. Because I have a whole bunch of questions that I didn't get to in the last couple weeks. So I'm going to cover a couple of them here, and then we'll take a break, and then we will come back to Toto Riina. All right, first question from Paul is connection to Angelo Bruno and the Cray twins. I guess he's asking if there was a connection to them. And basically the Cray twins were associated with Angelo Bruno, and it came through Bert Rossi, who was actually a European London-based mobster. Rossi met Ronnie Cray in prison. Rossi begins to sort of advise the Crays on how to run rackets and how to do certain things. And Rossi would end up becoming close to Meyer Lansky, Angelo Bruno, and Carlo Gambino. And also, according to sources, he was asked to kill Roy DeMeo, but refused. And he was actually a hitman on behalf of the American Mafia as well. So the association between Bruno and the Crays really came from Bert Rossi, who is like an advisor to the Crays. So that's really the extent of it. As far as there being like a direct relationship, I don't think there was. David, is it true that Luciano beat the fuck out of Vito Genovese at the Havana conference? No, that's a rumor. That's been a long-standing rumor that just absolutely has no bearing or truth to it. Dante, how much will the new law in legal betting, or how much will the new law that allows for legal betting, bookmaking, to affect the mob in all states? Here's the thing, and this is going to be a highly debated topic. I don't think it affects them. I think it's going to affect bookmaking in New Jersey. but I don't think it's going to affect bookmaking anywhere else, especially not New York, because there's not really casino type of action other than a couple of rancinos in New York. But I think, here's the thing. You're still going to have guys that are going to make book, and the reason why is very simple. People don't want to pay taxes. People don't want the government to know that they're betting. And also, to lay a bet with a bookmaker, you don't have to put cash down. You call them, you make a bet, boom. And then if you win, fine, you collect. If you lose, then you double up on another bet to try to win it back. So for people that don't have the capital to go to a sports book, a legalized one, and lay down $10,000 cash, because A, they don't want to pay taxes on it. They don't want to admit they have that kind of money. So I think you're still going to have guys that don't have the actual physical liquid cash on them. You're still going to have guys that are going to make bets with bookies. That's never going to stop. I don't think that this law is really going to. I don't think this law is really going to stop that. However, what it is going to do and what it will have an effect on is your real big high rollers. I think you're going to lose guys that throw $100,000 cash down. Those are the type of guys that are going to go to legalized bookmaking. And there's various ways that I think organized crime is going to get around this. I think obviously some of the odds, some of the payouts are going to change because you've got to give the average bettor an incentive not to go to a legalized sports book. Just on its principle, I think the idea that you don't want to report your income. You don't want to pay tax on it. That's going to be the big thing. And two, for the guys that don't have the cash on them that want to lay a bet, they're going to still continue to do that. So I don't think it's really going to affect it as much as people think. The mob does what it does. Organized crime in general has a way of sort of maturing as different laws come and different laws go. So the idea that somehow this law is going to completely eradicate bookmaking, I think just really, really isn't the case. James, when do you think Philip Lombardo took control of the Genoveses? 1969, later, or before? It actually took place in 1959, and Philip Lombardo was on a panel with Michael Miranda, Jerry Catania, and Tommy Abolai. It was really a tri-panel to run the family while Vito Genovese was in prison. So that's the truth as far as that goes. David, which of these families, in your opinion, has been the most crafty and elusive? Chicago, the Detroit Partnership, the Buffalinos, or the Genoveses? Well, that's a tough question for me because not a lot is known about the Detroit Partnership. They've been relatively quiet. They're not really a mob family that's talked about a whole lot. So they're definitely elusive. But for my money, the Buffalinos, Genoveses, I think the Buffalinos. I think what they were. The problem is when Russell Buffalino was in charge, they really had it going on. He ruled a family. Also sat at one point. He also ran the Genovese crime family. But after he died, things kind of went south. They weren't able to hold to the rackets. They weren't able to hold their territory. So, if I had to pick one, it would have to be like probably pre-1985, probably the Genoveses. They were able to really keep it low-key. They're still the Ivy League of the mob. For the most part, they've been able to keep relatively quiet. Obviously, now there's like a lot of indictments that are happening constantly. But I think historically, probably the Genoveses have been, at least in the time period that the Chin was running the family, I think they've been probably the most elusive. As far as the most crafty, probably the Genoveses as well. I think. It's just my opinion. That's one of those questions where you have to really give some in-depth thought, and I don't have the time to do that at the time. Okay, Richard. If the position of boss of bosses was made defunct once Maranzano was killed, why in later years was Paul Castellano considered head of the commission and given the title of boss of bosses? First of all, to my knowledge, that's the first time I've ever heard he was a boss of bosses. I think it's very apparent that he wasn't. I also think that he gave himself that title. I doubt very... Listen, Luciano was very succinct when he said that we didn't want one person to rule everybody, that we have 5 representatives of the 5 families. It's a voting system. There was not to be one person that was greater than the other. So the idea that Paul Castellano somehow, I mean, come on. That's the first time I've ever heard that, and I'm not saying it's not accurate, but if it's accurate at all, it's because he put the title on his own fucking head. Because believe me, Paul Castellano may have had some fucking power, but Vincent Gigante, believe me, had a lot of fucking power. Probably, I think, more powerful than Paul Castellano ever could have been. That's just my opinion, and a lot of that's based on Paul Castellano trying to legitimize everything. And so that's my opinion, but I think there's a book called Boss of Bosses about Paul Castellano, but believe me, I don't think that's realistically the way it was. Paul Castellano wasn't a gangster. He was a business guy, and I without going down a rabbit trail, I think that's probably the best thing to really say, to be honest with you. But I also, if you have an opinion too, feel free to share. Benny Binion and La Cosa Nostra. Okay. If you don't know who Benny Binion was, he's one of the only people that has a statue built after him in Las Vegas. He operated casinos. He operated 4 different casinos for 40 years. And he was really inspirational in encouraging casinos to take higher bets. And he also established the idea that casinos needed to be upper class and not like dive bars. He wanted the casino experience to be a place like you see today, where you walk in, it's like upper class, it's nice and neat, and wasn't sort of like a dump or a dive. Benny Binion, when he was younger, he ran errands for gamblers, steering customers to secret gambling dens. He also got his real start in bootlegging. In 1928, he opened a policy game, which was lottery numbers, and his nickname was effectively the Cowboy, but not for his love of horses, but because he shot to death the tough guy, and he shot him while laying prone on his back through the neck. Benny Binion was not somebody to fuck around with. 5 years after that shooting, he shot and killed a rival's number operator named Ben Frieden. In 1951, he opened Binion's Horseshoe and set the craps limit to $500, 10 times the maximum at other casinos. So he was inventive to the extent where if he realized that if he had bigger odds and bigger payouts, then he could successfully run a casino and really sort of force all the other casinos to either change their standards to compete with him or just wither away. And he was right, because it forced other casinos to raise their stakes to keep up financially. And he owned the most profitable privately owned casino in Las Vegas. And like I said, there's a statue. People have long said that there should have been a statue for Benny Siegel, but really, Benny Binion was the guy. He was able to take risks, and it was very lucrative for him. Let's see what else we got here. Looking. Okay, did Greg Scarpa ever get even with the doctor who gave him AIDS? Yeah, he did. He ended up suing the doctor, and I don't know if it was federal or state court, but he ended up getting $300,000 out of the deal. He ended up settling out. So as far as did he get, retribution? No, but he sued the guy and was able to take some money. But it was really too late at that point. Greg Scarpa was a dying guy, so the $300,000 really didn't do much for him in terms of. Come on. How do you put a price on, you get a blood transfusion and you get AIDS? I mean, $300,000. What's that going to do? It's not going to keep you alive any longer. All right. Does Montreal still pay tribute to the Bonanos? This has been a lot. I've been getting a lot of questions on this topic. There's a schism effect between the Bonanos and Montreal. This is a direct result of Joey Massino. There was a rift after he went rat. A rift after Rizzuto went to prison. I'm not sure what that relationship is now, but from what I understand from somebody I talked to is that there is friction between them. I've heard the Gambinos are effectively moving into Toronto now. Maybe not Montreal, so to speak, but they're making inroads into Canada. So I'm not sure if what that relationship is like, but I know it was frayed for a long time. Does Ontario and Dringota have to pay tribute like the Rizzutos. No, Ndrangheta does what it wants. They've always done what they wanted. They're a whole different faction of organized crime. Their roots are in Italy. And we're going to talk about that today when we talk about Toto Riina, and you'll see some of the differences of how things are operated. And just to, before and I'm not going to go into a break. I think I'm going to just go right into the show. One of the things that people need to understand about how this operates is, over here you have 5 families. At one point, a couple of guys, I don't want to get this wrong, but I think it was Vito Genovese or one of these guys wanted Italy to run like the United States, and they were totally against it. Italy is run very clannish. Calabrese, Abruzzi, you've got all these different regions, all these different towns, and each town has a fucking mob family. There's not anything that's under really one specific umbrella, so to speak. Obviously, you have Ndrangheta, and you have the Camorra, and you have the Sicilian Mafia. So there's a lot of different subgroups that are involved in this. And each town, each province, sort of has its own mafia clan. Everything is run by clans. There's this family, there's that family, and then there's this family. So what makes one guy superior to the others? And for decades, Toto Riina was the man. He was the guy that could get shit done. And it didn't start that way. He really had to do some egregious shit in order to get to where he got. Now, some of the other subtle differences are that the American Mafia typically doesn't kill children. The American Mafia typically doesn't kill women. The unwritten rule is that if someone snitches on you, you effectively kill the snitch, or you make a threat to hurt somebody's family, and usually it works. The American Mafia didn't believe in killing family members. The Corleonesi don't believe in that. Toto Riina did not believe in that. He believed in killing children. He believed in killing wives. He believed in killing cops. He believed in killing judges, politicians, dignitaries. He didn't fucking care. The bottom line to him was, you either get in line or I'm going to fucking kill you. That's the reality. And we're going to talk a little bit about some of those things today. But that's the major difference. Terrorist type of acts, like blowing up a fucking train, blowing up a fucking whole entire freeway to kill Falcone. These are things that Toto Riina did. He controlled police. He controlled government. This is, and sort of to draw a parallel, was Pablo Escobar. If you look at Pablo Escobar back in the day, he tried to run for the presidency of Colombia. And the reason why he does that, if he's president, guess what? He can do what he wants. He even tried to get on like a Senate type of panel, which ended up not working in the end for him. But if he could control by fear, then he could effectively do what he wanted. I mean, hello, they ordered him to prison. This guy builds his own fucking prison. Escobar. And so Toto Riina, in many aspects, was a lot like Pablo Escobar, to the extent that he believed in mass chaos and he believed in mayhem, because mayhem got you further in life than being a nice guy. And he was able to take the mafia from that perspective, where they just owned a couple territories, to being really the worldwide leader in narcotics trafficking and other things like that. And we've talked at length about the trafficking and et cetera. So I think, as long as you understand the differences, they don't work under one umbrella. Everything is territorial. To say that one is more powerful than the other, I think at this point today, like as in right this minute, I think Ndrangheta probably is the most powerful. We've seen them starting to move against whatever's left of the Rizzuto crime family in Canada. And there's some smaller subgroups that are in Canada, but ultimately they're the ones that are really controlling the power. And we're not talking a matter of 100 people. Your typical American Mafia family, maybe 100 guys, 150, 200, 250 if you're lucky. These are thousands. This is big scale shit. This isn't like your small, we have 80 made guys and we're going to take on this other clan. This fucking group is massive. And they're not just in Italy. They're all over the world. Saudi Arabia, Germany, France, United States, Canada. They're fucking Switzerland. They're fucking everywhere. So it's not like London. They're not stuck just to like the tip of the boot in Italy, the bottom of the boot, the top of the boot, whatever it is. They're fucking everywhere. And forget about how much money they're making. And these guys do stuff on a fucking epic scale. And one of the things that Toto Riina didn't believe in was extortion and loan sharking brought a lot of money. But he realized very early on that why nickel and dime it when I can really make a dent? And that's when your narcotics comes in, controlling government type of construction projects and stuff like that. He really had an understanding of how to organize. And one of the things people don't know is that he wasn't out in the open. He was in hiding for close to 30 years, running a mob family, building it, making it strong. So he was in the shadows the whole entire time. Whereas, typically the American Mafia, it's kind of hard for them to hide in the shadows. And think about this for a second. You take a typical mob family. We'll just invent one. We'll call them the Cipollini crime family, okay? And they have a boss, and let's say they have 150 guys. There's probably 4 or 5, probably 4 organized crime squads watching them, and they always get caught. Always, 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 always. We're talking about 150 people here. Yet in Italy, they have 25,000, and they can't get anybody. So is it the fear, or are they crafty? What is it? It's how they insulate themselves. And that's what it's always been about. And you cannot insulate yourself without having the rule of fear. If nobody fears you, they're going to talk. If they fear you, they won't. And with the way that organized crime seems to be functioning now, at least there's not a lot of murders. The days of the shootouts in the street corner are over. But the thing is that's how you control. You can't control somebody by taking them down a notch. You can't control somebody by taking their rackets. You control by fear and you control by murder. That's always been the way the mob has worked. Nowadays, I couldn't tell you exactly how it works because obviously I'm not, rubbing elbows with people like that. But I think that when you take murder off the table, you lose the power that you have. Because if somebody doesn't fear that they're going to be killed, then they just run to the FBI. So, all that being said, let's talk about Toto Riina. He was born November 18th, 1930 in Corleone, Sicily. In 1943, his family, his father, more specifically, and his brother, they found an unexploded American bomb during World War II. His father, Giovanni, attempted to open the bomb to sell the gunpowder for a profit. The bomb exploded, killing him and his brother, Francesco. And it ends up making Salvatore Toto Riina really the male heir to the family. At 19, Toto Riina committed his first murder at the behest of the Mafia. 6 years later, he committed his second known murder after an argument. He was arrested and ended up serving 6 years in prison. So out of the gate, he doesn't mind murdering people. Until 1958, the head of the Corleone Mafia was Michele Navarra, until he got whacked on orders of Luciano Leggio, who was a psychotic 33-year-old mafioso who would end up taking over as boss. Now, we need to kind of know who Luciano Leggio was. Leggio was the first Teflon Don of Sicily, to make a reference to like John Gotti. Nothing could stick on this guy. He was able to avoid convictions and dozens of crimes, including murder, extortion, and narcotics trafficking. Leggio, from an early age, had no compunction of murder. When he was 18, he was caught stealing corn from a farmer. The farmer ended up going to the police, telling on him. And as a result of that crime, Leggio would end up being sentenced to 6 months in prison. When Leggio gets released, he immediately kills the farmer in retribution. So obviously, he didn't give a fuck about it. The guy told on him, and he was going to have him killed. It was then that Michele Navarra recruited Leggio to work as an enforcer and hitman. Navarra felt that Leggio's compunction of murder was good, bring him in. He could do some work for us. And that's how Leggio kind of gets brought in. Leggio would end up meeting Toto Riina in prison in 1942. They became fast friends and partners in crime with Bagarella and Bernardo Provenzano. And that's important that you know that, because as they move forward, it's sort of going to be the Three Musketeers. Leggio would begin to build his faction with people only loyal to him and his cause, which also included Riina, Provenzano, and others. In 1956, Leggio would end up going to war with the Navarro faction and anybody who supported him. So Leggio wants to take over, and he realizes Navarro's got to go, and anybody that even remotely agrees with him has to go. It's sort of the idea of you can't leave one or two supporters left, because if you do, you're just going to have problems in the long run. In August 2nd of 1958, Leggio, Riina, and Provenzano and others tried to ambush Navarro. They set up on the corner, and as Navarro came around the corner in a car, they opened up fire, shooting 200 bullets into the car. Navarro was killed instantly, and Leggio would then take over as boss. Leggio would then begin to increase power of the Corleone mob, but because it was such a small town, they weren't a major faction in the Sicilian Mafia. In the 1950s, compared to other major mafia families based in Palermo, and that's sort of the thing. Palermo, there was a lot of different mafia factions, and Leggio's faction was very, very small. It was a small area to run in, and some of the bigger families looked down on the mobsters from Corleone, calling them peasants, which really infuriated them. In the 1960s, Leggio, Provenzano, and Riina, who spent a lot of preceding years hunting down and killing the surviving supporters of the Navarro regime, were forced to go on the lam due to arrest warrants. In 1969, Riina and Leggio were caught and tried in 1969 for the murders that were carried out in the past decade of the Navarro regime. They would be acquitted as a result of intimidating witnesses. Later that year, Riina would be indicted for murder again, but he officially went into hiding, and he would remain a fugitive for over 23 years. In 1974, Leggio was arrested and imprisoned for the Navarro hit. While Leggio kept some power behind bars, Riina was now to the head of the Corleone Mafia. And the reason why is Leggio had a lot of power, but he wasn't on the streets. And Riina realizes this. And so what Riina starts to do is he starts to be very Machiavellian in the way that he handles business. He ends up making inroads and formed friendships with 'Ndrangheta that was based in Calabria. He was the best man at the wedding of the 'Ndrangheta boss, Domenico Tripotto's wedding. So what he starts to do is he starts to forge alliances and friendships. And it's not necessarily that he wants these, but he realizes in order for him to get where he needs to go, he has to fake it till he makes it. During the 1970s, Sicily becomes a hub location for heroin trafficking, especially in regards to the refining of it and the importing and exporting of heroin. Heroin was coming through Persia and other places, Saudi Arabia, and Sicily, Sardinia always seemed to be the place it lands, and then from obviously Sicily it goes into Buffalo, New York, and comes into the United States nowadays. But back in the day, it really became the hub for refining the product and exporting it to other places. The narcotics profits far outweighed the profits of loan sharking and extortion, and so it really became the moneymaker for Cosa Nostra in Italy. Trafficking was the way it was. Riina wanted to completely control the distribution and the importation of narcotics, and he sort of begins to plan for war versus rival mafia families. He wants the money, he wants the territory, he wants the power, and the only way he's going to be able to achieve that is by taking out everybody who gets in his way. Later on, Riina ends up orchestrating the murders of a few high-profile public officials, including judges, prosecutors, and members of the police. He would also intimidate the state officials, government officials, And by committing these murders, it would enable him to frame other mafia families for those hits. And this is very Machiavellian in a sense. Many mob bosses were visible in their communities and often would be seen hobnobbing with politicians and mayors and government officials. And Riina, rather than bribe them, would commit acts of violence in those territories. He would never commit these acts in his own territory. He would commit them in other territories, which would bring heat on those territories' bosses, hence making the government go after them. Meanwhile, he's laughing off in the background saying, watch this, they're all going to get taken down and I'm going to take over. So Riina commits acts of violence, and he knew it gives him the upper hand. With Riina and his hierarchy effectively in hiding, when a cop or a politician got whacked in those territories, it would bring heat, like I said, to other mafia families. Plus, Riina would hit targets in other mafia territories, further forcing law enforcement to cripple other families. And like I said, he would never kill in his own territory if he didn't have to. The rivals of Riina were Stefano Bontide, Salvatore Inzarello, and Tano Baldamente, who were bosses of other Palermo mob families between 1981 and 1983. Now, this is very important because a lot of people will roll their eyes at this, but it's true. Between 1981 and 1983, we're talking 2 years, Bontide and Inzarello, with associates and members, were killed. There were 1,000 murders in those 2 years alone that were mob-related, as Riina and his allies wiped out any rivals or perceived rivals. So Riina sort of just takes it to everybody. Inzarello's killed. Stefano Bontide is killed. And there are 1,000 other murders that are associated with this. And so what it's really allowing Riina to do is take over everything. By 1983... the Corleone Mafia was essentially running everything, organized crime-wise. Over the next 2 years, Riina increased his influence by taking out his own allies, such as Filippo Marchese, Giuseppe Greco, and Rosario Riccobono. And that's what's really strange about this. And I don't think you've ever, maybe you see this a little bit with Carlo Gambino back in the day, and Lucky Luciano. But what he does is remember earlier I said he was Machiavellian. When he's starting out, he goes and he forges allies and friendships with other families to make it look like it's on the up and up. And so they're friends. Then he starts taking out his enemies. Then he does a 360. And he starts killing his friends. And he does that because it doesn't matter to him. He wants total control. And so that's essentially what he does. With business booming, Riina's own business tactics eventually sort of backfire on him in 1984 when a convicted killer, Tommaso Buscetta, became the first Sicilian-made man and boss to become a rat. Buscetta was a member of one of the losing mafia families in the war, and he wanted revenge on Toto Riina and also to save his own life. Buscetta also would give mafia information to prosecutor Giovanni Falcone, and Buscetta would testify at the Maxi Trial in the mid-1980s, which would result in hundreds of convictions. Riina would be found guilty in absentia and would get 100 years in prison. In 1989, Riina would have Vincenzo Puccio, mob boss of Kukuli, and one of Riina's allies and his two brothers killed. His reason was simple. The Puccios were plotting to overthrow Riina, and Riina wasn't going to tolerate it. So as Riina just continues to kill people, he's effectively the boss at this point. What he does is ruled by fear. Like I said, when you control by fear, that's where you have the power. Prior to Riina's ascension, the public typically in Italy never acknowledged that the mafia existed. It was always kind of one of those hush-hush kind of deals. But with the amount of sheer violence, the public in Italy sort of becomes outraged. And we're seeing this a lot today as the government in Italy is really going crazy against organized crime in general. But because of some of the things that Riina was doing, the public starts to get a little pissed and they start talking. Also, prior to Riina, the Sicilian Mafia was based in Palermo, where they controlled huge amounts of votes, which enabled mutually beneficial relationships with the mob and political figures such as mayors of Palermo, like Salvatore Lima and Vito Cimino. And what it is Ciancimino sort of allows this corruption to go on. Everything can be bought. A good example, property development in the famous valley known as the Golden Bowl or the Conca d'Oro. That was a hot property to own. And what Ciancimino was able to do was sort of sell it off to the highest bidder. Kickbacks, et cetera, et cetera. And it effectively would render anybody who was able to get their hands on it a ton of fucking cash. Salvatore Lima would end up granting a valued monopoly concession on tax collection to mob businessman Ignazio Salvo. And he was sort of the guy behind backing Giulio Andretti, who was a huge player in national politics. So and the reason why this may be a little confusing is that this is sort of where Toto Riina really is connected politically. He owns the fucking mayors, he owns the voters, and therefore he's able to sort of like insert himself and control things, not only from a fear aspect, but now he's controlling politics as well. Salvo also sort of acted as the financier to Andretti, which directly led back to Toto Riina, because Toto Riina has them all in his pockets. So if there is a monopoly on land, Rina's going to get it, or he's going to get a huge kickback. If there's high-end property that the government is using for, let's say, like welfare type of housing, Rina's got a kickback from that. He controls all of them. That's how much power he can control. Rina's predecessors kept a low profile, whereas Riina was sort of the opposite. Riina was not seen. There's an old saying, be seen and not heard, or be heard and not seen. And one of the things is Riina was not seen, but boy, was he heard. He would not, typical other mafia bosses in those days, wouldn't kill women and children, wouldn't do anything that could put them directly in harm's way. Maybe they could have somewhat of a peace accord and let certain things go, but not Riina. Riina was kill, 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 kill. The Italian government really had a hard time getting close to Toto Riina. So Pio Latore, which you're going to have to look some of this up for yourself. Pio Latore was the secretary of the Italian Communist Party in Sicily, who formulated a law which would allow the government to confiscate mafia assets. That's one of the things that the Italy politicians in Italy are doing now. If they can't indict them for crimes, then they follow the money trail. If they seize the money, then they're really crippling the mafia. You take their money, then they can't move, they can't do what they're supposed to do. So Pio Latore really has this idea of how to get to Riina and other people like Riina. Let's just seize their fucking assets. And that's sort of the idea that he had. The problem with that is that Riina had friends deep inside the Italian Communist Party, and they actually tell Riina what's going on. Hey, this guy is trying to like put this law into effect. It's going to be a problem. And what ends up happening is politicians that were owned end up stalling the law for 2 years. Then on April 30th, 1982, Pio Latore gets whacked. So there was enough time for Riina to say, okay, let's stall the bill. And in the meantime, I'll take care of this prick. And that's exactly how it happened. That's fucking power. Then in May of 1982, the Italian government sends Carlo Chiesa, who is general of the police, to Sicily to go after the mafia. Once Pio Latore gets killed, the Italian government says, fuck this shit. We're going to send the head of our police. We're going to send them here to Sicily, and he's going to crush the mafia. He's going to go after them. That's kind of a problem, because 4 months later, Chiesa gets whacked in the city center with his wife and a bodyguard. Goes to Sicily. 4 months later, he's gunned down next to his wife and children in a public square in broad daylight. And because of that, the public finally has enough Other politicians are finally getting scared that if they don't get in line somehow or another, they're going to get killed. And what ends up happening is, due to a public outcry, Lattori's law, which regarded seizing assets and financial stuff of Toto Riina, the law gets passed. Shortly after, Giovanni Falcone and Paolo Borsellino ordered arrest warrants, which led to the Maxi Trial against 474 Mafia defendants. So I jumped back in time a little bit, but Falcone and Borsellino were tired of the Mafia. The law gets passed regarding let's seize their assets. So then Falcone and Borsellino order arrest warrants, which led to the Maxi Trial, which Tommaso Buscetta takes part in. But 474 Mafia defendants were rounded up and arrested. Buscetta was the first boss to rat, as I said earlier. He ends up revealing the structure and inner workings and ends up naming names. Riina loses his shit. He's absolutely furious that not only did Tommaso Buscetta rat, but he's furious that Falcone and Borsellino not only helped pass the fucking law that's going to take his money, but they arrested 474 other people that he considered maybe not friends, but acquaintances. And as a result, he ordered a terrorist act. December 1984, train 904 was bombed. 17 people died, 267 were hurt. At first, the Italian government thought it was done by political extremists, but 10 years later, they found explosives which were the same used in the exact train explosion while searching Giuseppe Callo's property, and he was also a mob guy, so they found the same exact type of explosives, and that's when the Italian government finally realized that it wasn't a terrorist act. It was done by the mob. And I don't think, well, obviously, I know for a fact that in this country we would never do that. So Toto Riina's on a whole nother fucking scale of things, and it's very complementary, and I don't mean that in a good way. I just mean it's very similar to what Pablo Escobar did. He blew up buildings and other stuff like that. Riina's still furious from the Maxi Trial, still wanted to do more. The train bombing wasn't enough. So what he does is he gets together with all the heads, some of the other heads of the mafia families, and they all vote to have Salvatore Riina killed. And the reason why they want him killed is because he's the direct link to the financial stuff. So if they take him out, then he can't be an accessory to help the government seize assets. Lima was suspected also of helping Falcone sort of finding more assets. So in March of 1992, Salvatore Riina gets killed. Falcone and Borsellino were next on that list. In May 1992, Falcone and his wife Francesca and 3 policemen died in the Capaci bombing on Highway 829 outside of Palermo. 2 months later, Borsellino was killed with 5 police officers by a car bomb. Both hits were ordered by Toto Riina. Ignacio Salvo spoke against hitting Falcone and Riina. Ignacio Salvo would then go on to speak out publicly against the murder of Falcone, and Riina ends up having him killed as well. As a result of this, the Italian government has fucking had it. And what ends up happening is Baldessero DiMaggio, who was an ambitious mobster, was sort of having an affair. He ends up leaving his wife and children for a mistress. And Toto Riina is so incensed that somebody that is involved in organized crime could be such a degenerate that they would leave their wife and child. He chided him. He gave him a tongue lashing. And DiMaggio got scared and ends up running to the government. And the information that he has directly leads to the arrest of Riina in 1993. He would be tried and convicted. $125 million would be confiscated. November 17th of 2017 at 87, he died in prison as a result of cancer. And yes, I could have gone more in depth with this, but the important part that I want people to understand is Toto Riina did not fuck around. He can, when you can control government, when you can control just people that live, he crippled towns and cities by fear. When you control that, you control everything. It's just on a much bigger scale. Some interesting little tidbits. Toto Riina he was not of the cloth that didn't kill women and children. In fact, he thought that was the best way to control people. In fact, he slit the throat or had an 11-year-old boy killed because his father wasn't keeping quiet. This child that was killed, his father was talking to people, and so they took the boy and they slit his throat. 11-year-old child. That sends a message. Toto Riina would also kill journalists, and recently we've seen the Sicilian Mafia or Italian Mafia over in Europe do this. They will kill journalists. They won't hesitate. Giovanni Brusca, who was a hitman for Toto Riina, says he killed 200 people all on his own at the behest of Riina. So the story of Toto Riina was, they called him the Beast. He almost, and I almost want to say this, he's in a whole nother league of mob bosses. It wasn't enough to just keep control of a territory. He wanted to control Europe. And by doing so, he used train bombings, would kill politicians, didn't hesitate. And what we sort of see going on in Italy now is the government still going after them. And there's sort of probably, with the death of Riina, there's definitely a power vacuum that is going on in Italy. And yet, once again, we see there's someone else that is supposedly taken over now. And he's also in hiding. So these guys are able to really keep themselves insulated. But I think the Italian government has found a way to find them. If you cut off their assets, unless they're cut from the same cloth as Riina, and unless they're willing to kill women, children, and politicians, that's how you're going to cripple them. That's something that the United States government really just never figured out. Maybe Giuliani, sort of back in the day, Giuliani went on record, and this is off topic, but it's important, is that when the commission trial started, Giuliani went on record as saying, had he not read Joe Bonanno's bullshit book, he wouldn't have known the power. He wouldn't have known the structure of the mafia. He wouldn't have known that there was a commission. He wouldn't have known how to go after them. And so for everybody that sits here, because there's a lot of people that say to me, Joe Bonanno, man of honor, this and that. Joe Bonanno was full of shit. Joe Bonanno was a selfish, arrogant guy who was chased from the mob. He was shelved. And he writes this book. And in this book, he outlines the commission. He outlines everything. And he did a lot of damage to the mob. Giuliani himself said, hey, I had no idea how to go after these guys till I read this book. It gave me the groundwork to go after them. And so the idea that Joe Bonanno, he says in his book that the mafia, the word mafia, meant elegant, and it meant a fraternity among men who come together to benefit their communities. Get the fuck out of here. At least if you're going to lie, don't make it sound like the book read like the movie The Godfather. Joe Bonanno was a huge drug trafficker. He denied ever selling drugs. I think he did a lot of damage to the mob with his mouth. I wouldn't go so far as to call him maybe he is a rat. I don't know. I think that he was bitter, and I think he was very bitter, especially about the fact that he was shelved. And anybody that doesn't think he was shelved, you obviously don't know mob history. He wanted to kill the other four heads of the mafia to take over for himself, and he just thought that he was above it all. People have often said how smart he was, and maybe in a lot of ways he was, but he was no different than anybody else. And I think ultimately he did a lot of damage in some of the things that he did. But I don't think he'll go down in history as one of the great ones. That's for certain. But But that's sort of the show, and I could have gone more in depth with Toto Riina, but there's so much there, and so much of it is like grisly. So much of it is mayhem. I mean, I could have gone down a list of something like 2,000 murders that they attributed to him in a short period of time. And I don't want to focus on that sort of stuff. What always interests me about guys like this is that owning a territory just wasn't enough for him. He wanted to own everything. And the fact that he suckered his own allies into falling into a trap, that's a whole different scale. I mean, you look at the New York Mafia, for example. There's sort of a pageantry that goes with this. It's not so much the way it is anymore. But going back to the 60s, 70s, maybe 50s, 60s, 70s, not the 80s because it was done by then, but there was a pageantry to it. There was a mystique to it. You knew that if you did something wrong, there were one or two things that were going to happen to you. But then when you compare that to the way that it runs in Italy, they don't fuck around. They won't hesitate to kill you, your wife, your children, to bomb buildings. They don't care. It's all about control. It's a lot different. I wouldn't go so far. Well, I don't want to say they're a terrorist organization because there are going to be other people that are going to say that. But when you're bombing highways and buildings, that's like a whole nother like type of scale than than it is here. The mob here would never do anything like that here. Car bombing, sure. Shooting somebody in the street, sure. But once you get into the whole bombing churches and shit, that just like totally changes the name of the game. But that's the way things are there. They're completely different. They control the inflow and outflow of drugs. They always have. So in many ways, I think they're more dangerous. They definitely don't have that moral compunction to just take it to a certain level. They absolutely don't have a barometer for that. And that's what makes them a dangerous group. That also is what makes what's going on in Montreal very interesting. So all that being said, we're going to be back next week. I'm going to do a Q&A next week along with some other stuff. So send all your questions to me on Twitter at RealMobTalk7. Head on over to Facebook, Mob Talk Radio. Like us, hate us, send us your threats, submit questions there as well. And if you have any opinions or if you have any ideas of what shows you want us to cover, definitely reach out. Also, check out my buddy Scott William Collier's page. He is doing a show on the Cray Twins, which is coming. I'm also doing an interview on his show. That will be coming. We're going to talk about some stuff that probably I've never talked about publicly before, so that should be good. And anything else, you could just shoot us a message, and we'll get back to you as soon as we can, obviously. And I think that's going to be it for the week. Everybody enjoy your Memorial Day weekend. It's a little gloomy and rainy here in New York, but there's got to be something fun you can go out and do. And all that being said, we will see everybody next week. Also, get your questions in. I get a ton of questions every week. So as of today, start sending your questions in, and I will try to answer every single one of them next week. And we'll come back next week with a Q&A and a new topic and cover the news and notes like we always do. Thanks for tuning in. We'll talk to everybody next week.